The Drum Candy Podcast is brought to you by Drum Factory Direct.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into episode 59 of the Drum Candy Podcast. This is your host, Mike Dawson, coming to you from Drum Factory Direct in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This week, I have a special guest host. I invited David Throckmorton on. He is sitting down with his old high school drum buddy, Erik Hargrove. Erik is, he spent 7 years on the road with James Brown, and then several years after that with the great bassist Bootsy Collins. He's currently over in Singapore. So this episode is really fun to kind of like sit in on a conversation with two old childhood friends reconnecting and sharing stories and, just kind of kicking it. So before we get into it, I want to share this quote that Erik has on his website. This is coming from Bootsy Collins. Check this out. I was pleasantly surprised when I first practiced with Erik for our James Brown tribute tour in 2008 that he sounded so much like Clyde Stubblefield, the funky drummer, and that he had that same fire which I had not felt since playing with Clyde in the original JBs. Doesn't get much better than that, right? So let's get right to it. Here is Throck hanging out with his old friend, Erik Hargrove.
So, man,
yeah,
it's good to see you, brother.
It's great to see you, as always.
It's been a little bit too long. Last time I saw you was, maybe like before COVID, 4 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah, in person, yeah, it was...
Do you remember?
Probably 2017.
Oh, wow, longer than I thought.
5, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that trip you were in. You had Thaddeus. He was super young still. He came to our drum shop, and we had it for a little while. But anyway, we don't have to talk much about that. Real quick, how's the family, man? How's everyone?
Everyone's doing okay. Actually, my wife fell sick a little bit today. She took a COVID test to make sure that everything was fine, and she is,
yeah.
But I guess she's just a little rundown. You know how having 2 kids will...
Yeah, I'm well aware. Although my boys are getting old, but so man, I wanted to start. I'll say to everybody who's listening or watching, I mean, I'm probably going to come up a lot in this interview because we have so much history.
Yes.
So much shared history. We went to the same high school, the same grade school, and just spent so much time together. So I think a lot of the early days of us being musicians and drummers, a lot of it was shared.
Yeah.
But some of the questions, I might not even know the answers to a few of these early ones. Can you tell me how you first started playing?
That is the story that actually kind of takes me full circle through my years with James Brown.
Okay.
So it was actually your older brother, Robbie, and Louis Thomas that came to the grade school from high school, and there was a big join the band campaign.
Okay.
And it was Mr. Williams was in charge of the band, and Mr. Hastings. And they did every instrument. They featured every instrument. And when they got to the drums, they did the theme song to the TV show Hill Street Blues.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So in the middle of that, Robbie and Louie did this synchronized drum solo.
Okay.
And I tell you, every single kid in that auditorium wanted to play drums after that.
Yeah.
And I say that because when it came time to go see the band director, Mr. Williams, and say what instrument you wanted to play.
Yeah.
When I got there, he was like, "What instrument you want to play?" I said, "I want to play the drums." He said, "Look, every kid that has come in here has said they want to play the drums. Please pick a different instrument." Yeah. And I was like, "No, I want to play the drums." Yeah. He said, "No." He said, "Look, you've got great lips. Maybe you can play like trombone or tuba."
Yeah.
You think about that nowadays, you better not say nothing like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was being serious though, from a professional standpoint.
Sure, of course.
And I just would not back down.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, fine.
So what grade were you in? Was that all the way back in like 4th grade when you joined the band, or were you a little older?
I think it was 4th grade going into 5th.
Because I didn't think you and Robbie, my older brother Rob, I didn't think you guys were that far away in age that he would have been in high school already at that point. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I mean, either way, you heard them play. Or were they still were they still maybe in middle school playing that? Anyway.
Maybe they were. Maybe they were. Maybe he was like about to leave. Maybe the band that was playing was mixed up. Whatever.
Yeah. So did you not play it prior to that at all?
Nothing.
Okay. So
Nothing.
your start was joining the band, and like, I mean, I did the same thing. I mean, I played a little already because of my dad and my older brother, but I mean, that was where I learned to read and, know what a quarter note is and things of that nature. Okay. So
check this out. So I'm playing with James Brown. We do this private gig, and Jim Belushi has a band. Mm-hmm. And everyone's done with their sound check, and we're talking with the drummer, and the drummer's asking me about, how I got started. And I told him this same story.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I'm about to blow your mind because I'm the drummer who recorded the theme to Hill Street Blues.
Oh, my. That's crazy.
Yeah. His name's Willie Ornelius.
Oh, I know who that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember looking at him in Modern Drummer back in the day. He had like a really amazing Tama kit with a beautiful finish that I used to always like marvel over the wood and the finish. Okay, well, before we get too far ahead, let me tell you. So you were 2 grades ahead of me in school, and a few years younger than my brother. I first remember hearing about you from our mutual friend Damon Cook.
Damon Cook, yeah, my neighbor.
Who was in my grade. We knew each other since 1st grade. He and I and our other friend Will Brock used to pal around. Mm. And Damon, through us, became friends. And I think 1st grade, I realized that his dad, like mine, was also a musician. And they lived out on the west end of town. And then eventually they moved to the house next door to where you lived.
Yeah.
So through me knowing Damon, he would say, oh, man, you got to meet Erik Hargrove. You got to meet Grove, and told me you played. And I don't remember actually exactly what grade that would have been, but I do remember that as soon as we met, we were thick as thieves and just started hanging around and talking about music and drums. And you may have already known my brother possibly, but do you have anything you want to say about those days?
Oh man, I remember us being on stage, you, Damon, and I, and a couple other young musicians watching your brother play MacArthur Park, and sitting behind, like backstage.
Was it MacArthur Park or was it Central Park North?
Central Park North. Sorry.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Okay. Because I remember you guys talking about that. And I remember not feeling as I was used to hearing it all the time at home. So I was what's the big deal? Yeah.
No, we were blown away. We were like, wow, look at his foot. Oh, man.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think there was something to that whole situation with Robbie being my brother, being 4.5 years older than me. We were always close, but seeing people closer to my age that didn't know him the way I knew him be excited about it, and it drew me to be excited about it as well as being wanting to find out where you guys came from and and how you played, and just trying to, just like you do now when you meet a musician, what are these people about? How do they sound? Do I like to play with them? Not that drummers are playing together a lot in musical situations, but back then, through band and through us hanging out, we would play drums together and trade the seat at the kit and try things out and play. I will say that I remember it may not have been the first time I was at your house. In fact, I'm sure it wasn't the first time I was at your house, but I think it was the first time we ever went up to your bedroom.
Uh-huh.
And you had the brown pearl kit, I think, which was your first major kit.
Yes, it was.
And I remember you had two cymbals that were the same that I think were from a pair of band cymbals.
Yeah.
Like maybe like some 18s or something like that. And you used one as a crash and one as a ride, and you had some nice sounding hi-hats. And I remember just hearing you play for, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes, and I was just remember being knocked out, man, thinking like how no, really, I thought you had this amazing natural feel. I mean, I was so young, it was hard to think the way I would think about it now, but I remember just thinking that it felt good and you were getting a good sound. But yeah, that just kind of set us off on a certain path. And so you graduated high school a few years ahead of me, but during high school together, we got to play in jazz band together. We got to play in steel drum band together. And
every band.
Marching band.
Marching band.
That's
all
right.
Of it.
And we had a nice program, and you know, Mr. S at the high school had fun outlets, I think, for us to play in, and we got to, you know, do some different things, and maybe some other kids didn't. But all the while, we just were always playing and discovering new music. I mean, what are your memories of that time?
I mean, our band director, Mr. S, to his credit, and you know, to the kindness of his soul, you know, he nurtured us kids. I mean, and when we were our most rowdy, he really put up with this. And I'm mainly speaking about myself.
Yeah, definitely me too. Yeah, sure.
He really put up with this and still let us express ourselves musically. Yeah. You know, and still trying to guide us in the right manner. And you know, you need to play this, you need to play that, you know, and still let us do what we want.
Sure.
You know? And the fact that he took on building a steel drum band when, like, I don't think anywhere else in the country was doing anything like that.
Yeah, he was definitely far ahead of the curve, and a lot of people in Western Pennsylvania like immediately followed, you know, because it was such a great, exciting program.
Yeah, so I definitely want to give him his honors that are definitely due. Him, Mr. Hastings, even Mr. Williams too.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Cope as well. Those guys were great. Yeah, I didn't have.
Well, I think Mr. Cope subbed.
Well, he was doing. I think he was doing the choral program a lot, but I just knew him a lot from my neighborhood, and he and my dad knew each other, and he would help out at band camp, blah 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 blah. But they were always encouraging, and yeah, I mean, we were lucky. We were lucky to have such a cool program.
We were very fortunate, man.
Yeah,
you know. So,
and before we jump further ahead, I wanted to say, like, I mean, I have some specific memories of you and I. It's funny because Mike Dawson, who hosts the podcast, we were doing this show about Jack DeJohnette, and somehow Will Calhoun came up, and we were talking about Living Color. And I remember you and I just freaking out over that first Living Color record together.
Every drummer did.
Yeah. I remember you and I remember you turning me on to Tutu and us going crazy over Miles. Tutu, you had it on cassette.
Yeah.
Obviously, from my house and my brother, we got into like GAD and the Electric Band, and
that's how I got into it from you guys.
Yeah, Tower of Power. I mean, there's other shared stuff we all heard, whether it be, you know, the MTV era kind of bands and songs, Prince, Michael Jackson, you know, whatever, older stuff, Stevie Wonder. We all had that shared kind of stuff. I do remember though, you started to play with some friends that my brother used to play with in town, and you were super into Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to say about that, those days?
Oh, man. Your brother recommended me for that band got me into all the cool parties. Because the first time I played with them, we did Good Times, Bad Times. And, you know, Bonham does this the bass doubles on the bass drum, you know, and all the high school kids who were in the Zeppelin knew that was a difficult drum thing to do.
Yeah.
And the fact that I could do it amazed them. And if I showed up at a party and they say, "Oh, you're that drummer that can play Good Times, Bad Times. Come on in, man."
Yeah. That's cool.
You know? So, I mean, that's not much about, you know, the music of it.
No, but it's a memory, and it was a big deal at those times. Yeah. And it is hard to learn to play that stuff at a young age, you know? Yeah.
And to get your foot to do that, it took some practice.
Sure.
And the guitarist, Jason Amos, I would go to his house a lot, and we would be in his basement, just guitar and drums. And he would just be like, learn this song. Here, I made you a tape. Learn this.
Yeah.
No, that's not right. Play it this way. Listen to what he's doing. And he would like kind of drill me.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, and the bassist, Steve Machetta, he was a little bit the same way, but he was a little more loose about it.
Yeah.
You know, and then we started doing some original stuff. The singer, Mike Hood. He was always really cool, man.
Yeah.
You know.
Interesting.
Here I am, this young black kid playing with, you know, playing classic rock when, you know, it wasn't really that popular.
Yeah.
For African American, you know, kids.
And even I would say at that time, classic rock probably wasn't that popular to even the white kids at our school. I mean, it was more about what was happening at the time, you know?
Yeah.
Like the stuff that was on MTV or whatever, and not so classic. And I wasn't as familiar with that stuff. And my brother would have certain records I would hear, but I never gravitated towards, you know, Rush and those bands. I mean, they were cool.
Right.
For some reason, my ears went to a little more current to what was happening as the years went by. It's funny though. Like, I mean, you and I both have some shared interest in jazz music, obviously, and I'm probably a little heavier on the jazz than you are.
Much.
But you've always had this kind of feel that I remember from the first time I heard you play, that to when I hear clips of you in the recent years, that's still there. There's this thread in your playing that your personality is. It's very similar, although you've of course grown and got better. But I feel like your identity, kind of as a drummer, was kind of in place really early on. Do you feel that way?
I know I've gone through a lot of stages of, you know, like sitting myself down and saying, you got to work on this. This has to be better. You know, this is too sloppy, you know?
Yeah.
You've got to tighten this up. And I still go through those stages. I'm still going through those stages.
Yeah.
Especially when I hear you're playing, I'm like, come on, man. You got to get this.
Yeah.
You know, you're definitely a huge inspiration to me. And anytime I can throw your name out to any musician out there, I always do.
Oh, man. Thank you.
But, yeah, I mean, I never thought about it in those terms of a thread from my younger days till now. I would really have to like almost soul search to go through that, you know?
Yeah.
But if you hear it, then
sure.
You know, there it is, because you are known to be very picky.
Oh, I'm very picky. I mean, I tell people I'm opinionated for sure. But if something's on a high level, though, I feel like I'm the first person to give it up. You know, so it's not just to be negative. It's really searching for the inspiration and the stuff that makes me excited, and I think that's a worthy pursuit. Let's move forward. I don't want to talk about me. So out of high school, You followed a similar path to my older brother, and you joined the military to be part of the military band.
I did, yeah.
The Army.
Yep.
Did you go to the same school Rob went to in Virginia? I don't remember.
I did, but not right away.
Okay.
I went later. And actually, you and Josh were playing down there.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was when you were in school, though?
I was in the school.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? I mean, you don't have to spend too much time on it, but how was your time in the military playing, and what did you get from that?
Oh man! And the great thing about the military was it was similar to our high school in that you played in the marching band, you played in the concert band.
Yeah.
You know, you played in the jazz band, whatever band there was, whatever the musicians in the Army, in a particular Army band, and there's many different Army bands throughout the United States and around the world. You have that. You have the concert band. You have the marching band. You have any incarnation of any kind of band, salsa band, top 40, you know, all that. Yeah. So you have your choice of stuff. Not your choice. You kind of get picked to be in it.
Okay.
You know, by the people that are above you.
Yeah.
So being able to go through all these different styles and really try to do them, you know, accurately, was a challenge, and it was just really fun, of course, because you're playing drums, you know,
right.
You're playing drums for a living. Yeah. You do it all day. You wake up. Well, of course, you got to wake up. You have to do the military stuff.
Sure.
You know, but after that, it's just like, go play. Yeah. You know, there's some structure through the day.
Did you have the same teacher Robbie had, or no?
No.
Okay. Because he always spoke highly of his teacher. I don't remember the guy's name. But so how long did you end up? How long were you in the military? What years were those?
For 9 years. I was in the military for 9 years. From 89, the year I graduated, until 98.
Okay.
I signed out of the Army, physically signed my name out of the Army on my birthday.
Okay.
June 17th. 1998.
Okay.
June 18th, 1998.
Yeah.
I was on my way to Europe with James Brown.
Okay. So you're, correct me if I'm wrong, you were stationed in different places, but you ended up in Augusta, correct?
Augusta, Georgia. Yes, that's correct.
And that was kind of where the James Brown connection was formed.
Yes.
I don't remember what month or if it was 98 or 90. I think it was probably 98 or 99, because you brought up to me, we spoke last week or so, and you brought up to me, which I forgot, that you first started playing with James Brown around the same time I started playing with Maynard Ferguson.
Yeah.
Right? And then I remember hooking up with you on the road. I think were we playing Savannah, or were we playing Augusta?
Some small town in South Carolina. It was
South Carolina.
Town. Newberry.
Oh, okay. And then you came up and picked me up. You came to the show. We hung. Were you with James at that point already, or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was.
So we could go on for episodes about playing with James Brown, I'm sure. And I know it would be hard to condense into a short amount of time, but can you tell me some things about that experience? I mean, I think I saw you in the band live twice. I've seen some video footage as well. I know there were two drummers in the band, but what can you say about that experience? I mean,
that was being in James Brown's band was, on top of everything, was an absolute honor.
Sure.
Because here is a man who helped create a style of music. He didn't do it by himself. Yeah, a lot of people credit him solo, but no, it was him and the musicians around him.
Sure.
You know, and there was already like stuff going on in New Orleans, but he really like solidified it, you know, and took it where it went to go.
Yeah.
So not only that, but the people, the musicians he influenced,
Yeah.
like the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, millions of
Yeah.
So if there was no James Brown, music today would be totally different.
Oh, completely. There'd be no
Because
hip
of
hop.
his influence on.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, pop music would be different.
I agree.
There might not even be rap.
Yeah, you're right.
You know,
Yeah.
so, and you had to remind yourself of this because he was a taskmaster. I mean, he could be, I would say, just super challenging to be around, not just to work with, but to be around.
Sure.
But, you know, having the opportunity to play his music, you know, and know that that music has inspired, you know, millions of people,
Yeah.
you know, since, you know, the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and here I am, you know, of course it's towards the end of his life, but here I am on stage with him traveling the world.
Sure.
You know, so I always made the most of that experience. At least I tried to.
Yeah.
With not just, you know, on stage with him playing the music, but the places that we went.
Yeah.
You know, I always tried to connect with people in all these different countries. And I'm not trying to say I'm some sort of ambassador, but I would try to engage people and just find out what their way of life was about, you know? And a lot of times I would end up hearing what they thought about Americans or what, you know, so what their misgivings about Americans were,
Sure. Yeah.
you know? So, and then I said, I need to change their mind about this. You know, if it was a negative, you know, so I sought out to do that whenever we were on tour. So a lot of times I was out by myself because nobody else wanted to go run around with me.
Yeah.
You know, then I became the tour guide because I was always the one who found out where the jam sessions were, where other live concerts were happening. You know, there was a time we went to go see Lenny Kravitz. We were on tour, you know, because I found out he was playing in Albuquerque. You know, I got on the phone and called the ticket office to talk to the management to get us passes, backstage passes.
Sure.
You know, stuff like that. You know, and that was all the stuff that was just surrounding that I was privileged enough to do because James Brown thought I was worthy enough to play drums in his band.
Sure. Well, what about from a drumming standpoint? I mean, is there, because we are on a drum
let's
podcast.
get into the drumming.
I mean,
I mean, let's get to that.
And I don't want, you know, I'm not trying to bring up any negative stuff, but on some level, it's probably important to talk about some of the stuff. I remember you telling me sometimes being frustrated at times about being one of two drummers, another guy who'd been there much longer than you. So sometimes you probably felt like you were playing, in a sense, the role of the second drummer.
Yes.
Because I remember coming to hear you one time in particular, and you didn't play a lot, and I was frustrated for you, you know. And I imagined, like, I probably couldn't do that. Me, like, I'd freak out. And you always seemed to have a positive vibe on stage. You would fit in where you could and add things, and then you'd get your moment to shine. It would be beautiful, but and I don't want you only to focus on that, but also the positives of drumming in the band and some drum related stuff, if you can touch on those things.
Yeah. So James Brown has always had at least two drummers.
Right.
You may see a TV special or something where there's just one guy, but traveling, touring, it's two drummers and a percussionist.
Right.
So to say that he's picky is a huge understatement.
Sure.
And a lot of times when unison hits don't happen, it's always the drummer's fault.
Okay.
You know, no matter where, if the horns were rushing or whatever. Yeah. So, playing with another drummer, sometimes it was playing at the same time, but mostly after I had been in the band for a while, it was like, okay, this is your song. This is the song you're going to play by yourself until I say otherwise during the song. Yeah. You know, so no matter whose song it was, me or the other drummer, his name was Robert Thompson, Mousy was his nickname. So if Mousy was playing at any point in time, Mr. Brown could turn and point to me, or sometimes he wouldn't even turn. He would I just see this arm go back. Yeah. You know, and I had to know whether that was for me or the guitarist beside me or the bassist on the other side of me. Sure. You know, I had to know that it was for me. Yeah. That was a whole new learning curve of being pointed in and out of anywhere in the music. Yeah. So, okay, he points me in, like, do I come in right away? Do I wait for the next phrase? Yeah. Do I write the next beat? Sure. The next one? Yeah. You know?
Did the fear of not being able to always read his mind exactly, was it crippling at times?
At first, yeah. It definitely was. Because when I first started making those mistakes, it was like, okay, he's new, you know, we'll let him get used to it, you know. But that process for him was different than what I thought that process was. So he was like, sense. You need to have this now. Yeah. It became like, you're not good enough type of thing. Yeah. You know, so there was in your mind, or you felt like that's what he was projecting? Those were his words sometimes. Oh, okay. Yeah. Wow. And it wasn't just me. Everybody in the band got that. Sure. At different points in time. You know, you would go from Dookie to Gold. Yeah. You know, within a minute. Yeah. He would praise you on stage. After the next rehearsal, you know, you're rehearsing one song, you go to the next song during sound check. Now you're nothing. Sure. This is just a question for my own curiosity. I mean, sometimes when I see video or you playing and Mousy would play, he'd point you in, you'd play for a little bit, he'd point Mousy back in. And I would wonder sometimes, do you think he would just forget sometimes? Like to get the other guy in, or would it be like, okay, I brought Erik in, now it's fresh on my mind, now I'll quickly remember to go back to the other guy? You know, like, was there some of that in your mind? He had several different scenarios that he would switch drummers. Yeah. One scenario was, yes, he wanted to give one drummer a break, let the other drummer play. Yeah. Another scenario was he doesn't like what one drummer's playing. He wants the other drummer to play. Sure. Another scenario is the sound that he's hearing. Yeah. The sound on stage isn't right. Yeah. So now he wants to change drummers. The drummer, what the drummer's playing is fine. So the sound isn't right. Let me ask you that. Did that mean that there would be certain nights, certain cities, certain tours where you played a ton more because of these factors than other nights? Yes. Yeah. Okay, interesting. And a lot of times, for whatever reason, those would be like the small towns in like Europe somewhere. Yeah. You know, where he would just love me to death. Yeah. You know, he's like, son, I want you to play just like that. Yeah. When we do the show tomorrow, play just like that. So next show, I'm remembering this. I'm gonna play just like that. Yeah. And I'm doing it. And he turns to me, points me out. Yeah. Points to Mousy. And I'm just like, yeah. I mean, to me, it sounds like there's no rhyme or reason. It's just, he's just an interesting guy that can go any way at any time, you know? Well, some people in the band used to call him Games Brown. Yeah. Nice. And he let me know that he would play with me in particular.
Yeah.
Because he would point me in and then like 10 seconds later point me out.
Oh man.
And I would be angry about it. And you could see it on my face. And he'd turn and he'd look at me and he'd see that anger on my face and he'd laugh.
Yeah, that was so jive.
And then one day he came to me, he said, son, he said, I know you want to raise sand with me sometime. He said, but just keep doing what you're doing. Everything's all right.
Yeah. So were there some beautiful moments musically that there had to be?
One thing, when you said that, it came to mind was he liked to always rearrange his music. Mm-hmm. You know, he always wanted to give the horns a new part or make us play weird drum beats or whatever.
Yeah.
So during a rehearsal, he had the horns. He said, I want you to play this. I want you to play this. And I want you to play this. You know, and yeah. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
You know, and there were times where the horn players had to interpret.
Yeah.
You know, and like on the fly figure it out and just make something nice.
Yeah.
But this particular time, they played what he said. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
And I was like, where did this come from?
Sure, yeah.
There were times where he would like to get on his organ.
Yeah.
And play, and he'd do these solos, you know, in the middle of a song, whatever. And it was like, sometimes it was like hit or miss. Mm-hmm. But when he was hitting it, and he'd turn and he'd look at me, and I'd be like, yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes he'd mess up and he'd look at me and I'd be like,
yeah.
You know, you don't want to just like shake your head no at him.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Because he gave it up that he made that mistake.
Oh yeah, that's good.
And that was rare for him to say that he made a mistake.
Yeah.
He would play some great stuff sometimes, man.
Yeah. I mean, you can't, you know, if you're familiar with that music, even if it's just the real classic era, I mean, it's some of the most infectious music ever made. And every time I go back and revisit, I'm just amazed at it. What the guy did and how he changed music and created new music, it's frightening. I mean, I play a lot the last 10 years with this amazing guitar player from Akron, this guy, Dan Wilson.
Yeah.
And Dan plays with Christian McBride a good bit. And Christian's a huge James fanatic.
Yes, he is.
So he's always telling me stories about talking to Christian. But Dan and I have this kind of secret language that you would know the language, but we start quoting all the gibberish from the tracks and all the just James talking over beats and like stuff that's been sampled to death. And I mean, we recite Funky Drummer, all the talking bits nonstop, and it's some of the most amazing stuff ever recorded, really. You know,
yeah.
What about the when I hear those old recordings now or see old video clips of Clyde or Jabo or whoever, sometimes it's you're acquainted with or remembering like, oh wow, some of this stuff is lighter than you think it is. When I saw you play with the band, I mean, it wasn't ever bashing really, but I mean, you're a strong player. How much would you get to experience or experiment with different volumes, or was it all pretty just straight down the middle and kind of playing fairly hard at that point?
It really depended on his mood and the environment.
Okay.
So if it was, a big stage, of course you needed to hit those drums.
Yeah.
He wanted it heavy.
He wanted to feel it.
Yeah. And that's a whole other rabbit hole with, the stage manager and him running monitors and front of house and everything else. So,
okay.
And then, you have like smaller venues with smaller stage. And then him doing like ballads and stuff, and him telling us play brushes.
Yeah.
No one thinks that, oh, you're going to play brushes with James Brown. Yeah.
Yeah. Sweeping brushes or more just time with brushes like sticks?
I played sweeping.
Yeah.
I stirred.
Yeah.
You know,
Cool.
I played
Nice.
patterns and tried to, you know,
Yeah.
make it sound nice.
Exciting.
Sometimes, even when Mousy was playing, because sometimes Mr. Brown would want the brushes, but with, you know, with time and you know, playing like a 12/8 feel.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would just stir lightly underneath of Mousy.
That's cool. Gives you something
You
to do and work on and practice while you're not being loud and offensive or something, you know.
Yeah.
Or
you know, just to
noticeable,
try
even.
and keep that kind of vibe and try to have a blend of, you know, nice drum brush sound, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we could talk about James all day, and he may come back up. These podcasts usually run around an hour. We're at like 40 minutes, so I'm going to try to continue moving forward. If there's something you really want to say, just stop me at any time.
Okay.
How soon after stopping playing with James did the Ringling Brothers gig happen? And was that what was next as far as a long-term kind of performing gig?
So it was Army, Brown, Circus, ABC.
Okay, cool. So what year did that start?
2005.
Okay, and was
I actually left James. I quit.
Okay, and I should know all this. I just forget. You know, our good friend Josh Dunleavy was playing alto saxophone in the Circus. Was he still in the band when you got on the band?
No.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
So how long did you do Ringling?
About 2 years.
How was that experience?
That was a whole other thing, man. Circus drumming was a totally different animal.
Yeah. Lots of shows, right? Like a lot of shows.
A lot of shows, a lot of playing, a lot of high energy. Like my first year, the circuses do a new show every 2 years.
Right.
And when I joined, it was already the second year.
Okay.
So I only did the rest of that year, and then it was a new show.
New show. Okay.
Yeah. So that first year was high energy playing, and my endurance was up.
Oh, so, but did you get there right away, or were you still kind of young and strong enough that you were able to jump right in and effortlessly, or did it take a minute to get that?
It took effort.
Yeah.
It took serious effort, you know, and then I realized, I said, you need to pace yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I was getting blisters.
Yeah.
You know, when you get tired, you end up gripping the sticks harder than you want, you know, and then sometimes you're not paying attention that you're actually gripping the stick. So when I started getting blisters, I was like, okay, you need to pace yourself, you know, keep your posture.
Were you still playing acoustic drums, right?
Acoustic and electric.
But primarily acoustic though, right?
Primarily acoustic, yes.
I think I remember seeing our friend John Zook maybe play, I don't even remember, but I remember there was a point, either he was telling me or said it was suggested, or maybe he was using more electric drums with real cymbals at one point. But I could be wrong on that.
They did have that. The previous drummer, Sam Wiley, he was using D drums. That was during the time where Josh was playing.
Okay, yeah, I remember him talking about Sam.
Yeah. So that he was playing D drums and like real cymbals.
Did you feel like playing so many shows, playing such high energy? You know, they weren't short shows either. You have multiple shows on certain days. Do you feel like that was just the physical act of playing that much helped you in a lot of ways? It
definitely helped my endurance, and the attention that you have to pay to what you're doing, because you have to watch
monitors,
a TV monitor. You have to watch a TV monitor. You have to watch the conductor. You have to watch what's happening out in the three rings.
Yeah.
Because you're accentuating things that are happening with those acts.
Yeah.
You know, and you're using the TV monitor to see the furthest ring, which is difficult to see, of course.
Yeah.
Then you're watching the conductor for these breaks, because there's a lot of vamps.
Yeah, sure.
So there's vamps. You can come out of a vamp with a 1-bar drum fill.
Yeah.
You can come out of a vamp with just a cut straight into something, there were a couple different ways to come out of it. And you had to be watching, because the conductor is watching the acts and he's going off them.
Yeah.
So it could be anything.
Yeah.
So that was the first year. It was a lot of just physical playing.
Yeah.
The second year was a lot of mental playing, where there were a lot of loops and stuff that I had to trigger. So we had a Roland SPDS, and yeah, so I was given like all these different loops that I had to program and put them into the machine.
Yeah.
I had to edit them myself.
Woo, yeah.
To make sure that they were, truncated just enough, so they would loop properly. And then it got put with the click, so, so trigger, play, watching the conductor, watching the act.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Here comes the one bar drum fill, stop loop, start new loop.
Yeah. Sure. That's a lot.
Well, and then catch the tricks, catch the accentuations of the trapeze guy flipping. Stop, start,
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
It was so much mental that was going on.
Yeah, that's
man.
a lot. That takes up a lot of space in your mind, and
yeah.
It doesn't sound easy.
No.
And now, I mean, I'm about to turn. I mean, you're a couple years older than me, but I'm about to turn 50 in January, and
big 50.
Yeah, and now when I play a really high energy gig, I realize like I'm not doing as much of that as I once did, and it's like it doesn't stay with you like it used to. I'm not sure if you experience any of that.
I have. Yeah. I did. And again, I just had to pace myself. What happened when I played with Bootsy Collins for the second time, after a few years break, I had to get myself back in that kind of shape.
Yeah.
Of the heavy playing.
Yeah.
And the endurance of it.
So you left Ringling after a few years. What happened then?
I went back to Augusta. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we should mention when you were in the Army. This could be just a passing thing. You were stationed in Germany for a long time.
For 3 years, yes.
Okay, so, but I'm trying to think of how that relates to now, and maybe it doesn't relate at all. So back to Augusta after the circus.
Yep. And then I moved to Florida.
Okay.
Only a few months later.
Well, you were in Orlando for a while, right?
Yeah, right outside of Orlando.
Okay.
I worked for an independent record label.
Okay.
Who, I don't know if you know the drummer Tom Hurst.
No.
He lives in Nashville now. He was an Augusta guy, and I don't know, was he an Augusta guy? I just know he was friends with a lot of people in Augusta.
Okay.
Yeah, he moved to Nashville. Now he plays with like a lot of the big stars and stuff.
Okay. Well, tell me this. I mean, you're currently living in Singapore.
Yep.
Remind me how did you even get to Singapore? I don't remember this at all.
Yeah. So, I mean, like there's so much stuff that's just like connected back to other things. So this goes back to Ringling Brothers.
Okay.
One of the keyboard players from Ringling Brothers lived in Orlando.
Okay.
So when I was in Orlando,
yep.
Work dried up for me. Bootsy had stopped playing.
Yep.
That the tour I did with him initially stopped.
Yeah.
And the local gigs that I was doing weren't happening. The independent record label went belly up.
Yeah.
So that keyboard player, Adam Keymont, he said he got an offer to be a music director in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, look, man, I didn't get to pick the band. So if for whatever reason the drummer they picked doesn't work out, you're my first call.
Mm-hmm.
sure enough, a few weeks later, he calls me and he says, "Hey man, how soon can you get to Singapore?" So I was like, I'm thinking, okay, I need this work. I said, and I've never been to Singapore. Why not?
Yeah.
So I said, give me a couple weeks to, pack up my apartment, blah, blah, blah. And he said, man, you got 5 days. So I physically packed up my entire apartment, couch, bed, and all. I put it in a U-Haul. I took it to a storage facility and I unpacked it.
Yeah.
5 days later, I was on a plane to Singapore.
Wow. So, and again, we're getting the Cliff Notes version of all this, but so I know you lived in Singapore for a long time, played there, eventually met your wife, your wife now, mother of your children in Singapore, Lily. She's a singer. And then at one point you made your way back to the States for a while, started playing with Bootsy again. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
And then eventually found your way back to Singapore.
Yeah.
So I kind of just skipped over a bunch of stuff, but tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so after I did the gig here in Singapore, it was similar to Cirque du Soleil. So Singapore had its own version of Cirque du Soleil. Even used people who worked in Cirque du Soleil. That ended 2.5 years into its run. We won't get into the reasons why, but
sure, I get it.
Then I went to Thailand. I lived in Bangkok for just over a year.
How do I not know any of this? This is crazy. Go ahead, continue.
I don't know. And I played in a prestigious hotel that had a big jazz program, and this pianist who had been there for a decade or more. Yeah. Playing. I don't know if you know the bassist L.D. Young.
No.
Anyway, I'll skip over that. He played at this place anyway. You guys look up L.D. Young. Yeah. And after that is when Bootsy called me and said, "Hey, where are you?" He basically said, "We need you back."
Yeah.
Yeah. So I left, and came back to the States, and did him for a while living in Virginia.
Right.
I lived in the house with my aunt.
Right.
And then my wife came later, and we got married. Blah blah blah.
And the Bootsy stuff, I remember you telling me was fun and really great. It just didn't end up being really enough playing to warrant staying. Is that right?
Yeah. There were some things going on internally that didn't have anything to do with the musicians.
Yeah.
That kind of derailed things. So we didn't work like we should have been working.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to get, some jobs.
Yeah.
And when I say jobs, at one point I had 3 jobs at one point.
Wow.
Because I couldn't handle. It was about 2 weeks, and I said I can't do 3, so I had 2 jobs.
Wow.
I worked in a grocery store, and I worked at what's it called? Hardware place.
Okay.
Help me out.
Home Depot?
Home Depot. So I worked at Food Lion and Home Depot at the same time.
Okay. Interesting.
For a few months. Yeah. So then I got a call from some people that said, "Hey, we want you to work in China. Play for a Franco Dragone show." Franco Dragone is the producer who produced a lot of Cirque du Soleil shows, but then built his own company, and now he has similar shows all over the world.
Okay.
So he had shows that he was building in China, and the composer said, "Look, we want you for this gig to play drums." And I was like, "Cool." I said, is there any chance I can do like assistant MD He said, actually, we want you to be DMD.
Oh, wonderful.
And I was like, okay, I'm thinking in my mind, I'm not qualified to do that. I'm just not qualified to do that. And I said to him, I said, I don't know if I can do that. I said, I can assist, but I don't know if I can actually do it. He said, don't worry about it. We're setting it up all around you. Mm-hmm. You don't have anything. You hit some buttons, you know, on a MIDI keyboard, you trigger some stuff, you'll be fine. Yeah, they did set it up, but it was not easy.
Yeah.
It was similar to the circus stuff.
Okay.
It was a lot of mental do this now, mm-hmm. which wasn't always on the beat. Yeah. You had to guess, okay, the act's about to do this. I have maybe a couple more beats, you know, cue the band in to the next section of music out of the vamp. You know, that was a whole new experience. And I'm so glad that I had it.
Yeah, those are really unique opportunities, gigs like Ringling, James as well, dealing with his personalities and his commands. This gig you're speaking of now, these are a lot of gigs that most people aren't going to get the chance to do a lot of things like that. You know, I've done a ton of gigs. I've never had any gigs like the ones you're speaking of. You know, with these kind of parameters and different things you have to do on the gig. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember playing a gig with a singer who did these big Christmas shows in Pittsburgh. This great singer, B.E. Taylor, who passed
mm-hmm.
away. God bless him. And he, I had to just play along with some tracks and like start some loops from like a laptop. And I was like, this is too much. I just want to play. How do I just play? I don't want to push buttons. I just want to play the drums. You know?
Yeah.
So we only have another maybe 10 or so minutes. Tell me about what's going on now. I mean, I will say, not to talk too much, but I remember my dad, Bob, who was a great drummer, and you knew it well, and I mean, you're part of the family, but like my dad passed away, and the years go by so fast now, 2020, when did COVID start, 19 or 20?
Well, it depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, well, it would have been in January. I can't remember if it was 19 or 20. The years are just running together. But I remember when my dad passed, you calling me on my birthday, which was the day of my dad's memorial service, just to send well wishes and all that stuff. And you were the first person that kind of hit me to COVID. You said, hey, man, be careful. Watch out for this COVID thing. I was like, what are you talking about? And, of course, we all knew within the next month or two what you were talking about, and that's changed everything for everybody. So that's kind of gone on, you know, worldwide. But you can tie COVID into this if you like, but how are things kind of, I don't want to say post-COVID, but semi-post-COVID.
Yeah.
And now, how are things now playing, and what are you doing now?
Yeah, so it's like, it's probably better to just say post-lockdown.
Okay.
You know, because we live in a COVID world, and COVID dictates, we need COVID's permission to do things in this world now.
Yeah.
Because if COVID gets too bad, things shut down. If too many people start dying, things shut down. Countries shut down. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's post lockdown for Singapore for me. And we had 2+ years of lockdown and eased restrictions, but musicians here were like the last to be able to go back to work.
Sure.
A lot of people were just doing like live streams.
Yep.
When you were able to be in the same room as people.
Yeah.
And you had to be socially distanced. You had to be 1 meter apart.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, we dealt with a lot of the same stuff. Yeah.
So you had that going on. And now like gigs are kind of back. But the international travel that a lot of us were doing is not.
Yeah. I've just been doing a little bit recently, and it's been really difficult, really challenging.
Yeah, now you got the airline stuff.
I mean, played a bunch of shows in Canada over the last few weeks. It was a total nightmare, but that's another story. So, are you? You were telling me about a possible gig that's coming up. Is that worth talking about, or do you want to wait on that?
It is, but I'm supposed to wait to talk about who it is. But there's a
potential cool.
There's a regional, an Asian pop star that kind of sought me out.
Wonderful.
Him and his music director. So I will be playing with them coming up in the fall. Because I'm not supposed to say dates too.
Sure.
So
No,
in the fall.
I hope that pans out, man. I'm excited for you because I know we all need to get back out there and play. You know.
Yeah, and it's a big deal because in this part of the world, this person is kind of a big deal.
Great, man.
And I like the way this person. I like the musician that they are. Great,
man. I can't wait to hear more about it and to hopefully hear some music. This is going to sound like hopefully anybody listening and watching, I'm not talking too much, but I wanted to tell you, man, I saw a video of you in the last year. I'm not a huge social media guy, but I'm on there a little bit, and I only have Facebook. But I saw a video I think you shared, or maybe someone else shared and tagged you. I'm not even sure. But I remember seeing our buddy Will Brock commented, like, complimenting how you sounded. And I clicked on the video, and you were kind of playing like a groove solo.
Yeah.
Soloing, but not like overplaying, but just really musical, all this space. And it was funny, man. We haven't been together a lot playing in years or anything like that. But it was funny, man. And I don't want this to sound like as much about me as it probably is going to. But I was like, man, like, we really have a lot of similarities in our playing. And I think it just comes from all those years growing up and hearing the same players and loving the same stuff. And it was really like a touching thing for me. I was like, man, that's my brother. And like we're total different parts of the world, and they're playing from the same place in a lot of ways, you know? It was exciting.
We have a lot of similarities in our thinking sometimes about drums and music.
Yeah.
And when because I watch videos of you all the time. And maybe I get some of that from you. I get that influence, but I find myself saying, yeah, I would do that too. Mm-hmm. I would play it that way too. It would be, sometimes you're playing, it doesn't come out that way, but it's in your mind to do that. It's the musicality of how you want to hit that cymbal, how much you want it to come out,
Yeah. I always feel like the few times we've seen each other in the last 10 years where you do get to see me in person and play, we hang out. I always feel like I'm playing these kind of weird gigs, and sometimes I wonder, like, man, he might think I'm like losing it playing all this, hinting at avant-garde music or free music, but I think we had a nice conversation a week or so ago, and you were telling me that you're starting to think. I don't want to say stylistically like that, but starting to think about different ways to play and different ways to express and nuance and touch and colors. Yeah, that's a beautiful way to say it. Yeah. And sometimes playing groove music, you can definitely implement all that stuff, but maybe not the same way as some softer musics. And I find I'm just wanting to play softer and softer, and that might just be aging. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's something that I've been talking to my students about, man, and it's textures. Mm-hmm. It's how you hit the hi-hat, with what part of the stick you use to hit the hi-hat, on how much of the stick you use on a rim shot at any given point, how, and a lot of drummers don't realize about ghost notes and the different volume levels of ghost notes.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, and different, and of course it all depends on the environment you're in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes those ghost notes really need to stick out.
Of course.
You know, you need to play them a little harder than you normally would. You know? And then sometimes you need to play them a lot softer. You know, and if you don't practice any sort of technique to be able to do that, then you'll be lost.
Yeah. How much?
You know, so
go ahead.
So
sorry.
for me, it's been about textures. I've been exploring more textures and observing the textures that I use.
Yeah.
And observing the textures other musicians use.
Do you? How much time do you get to? I mean, you have 2 young kids, a wife. You know, COVID's happened. How much time do you get to play and practice? Is that
Wednesday and Sunday?
Really?
Those are my teaching days.
Okay.
So,
well, do you find that
students I get to play?
Do you find that? I think sometimes, like I remember when I had my kids were young, it's like when you do have time, you seem to find a way to make the best of that time. Do you find that's what you're doing?
I try hard to, because like most drummers, sometimes we just want to fool around. Sometimes we just want to do some stuff, and you realize, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Get back to what you're supposed to be doing.
Sure.
You know, being mature enough to take yourself away from, you know, going down the sliding board constantly.
Yeah.
Dude, there's a swing set. Dude, there's the monkey bars.
Yeah.
Get over there. Do all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, man, I can't wait to see some clips of what you have going on later in the year, and I look forward to hearing you, and hopefully you'll get back over here sometime where I can give you a big hug, man. Yeah,
man. I look forward to those days.
Yeah, definitely, man. Well, look, I'm gonna wrap this up for now, and much love, man. You know I love you, big brother, and I'll see you soon, okay?
I love you back, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks.
All right, that's it for this week's episode. Hope you enjoyed that chat with Throck and Erik. And also, I hope you enjoy this new format we're doing here, where I'm inviting Tom and Dave in to interview some of their friends and mentors and heroes. And I'll be back doing some more interviews myself. And I've got some other ideas in the works, a little bit more gear specific. We've got more of our 10 Reasons to Love. We've got some other roundtable ideas. So the Drum Candy podcast here is going to keep evolving, keep growing. I'm so glad you guys have been, hanging in there, checking it out. Again, if you haven't already, please head over to iTunes or Spotify or YouTube, wherever you're watching or listening to the show. Give us a 5-star rating. Drop a review. That does help this show pop up more when people search for drum podcasts. And obviously, you want every drummer in the world checking out the show. So again, thank you all so much. We'll be back next week. See ya.